What's happening? Happy hump day to all of you. Thanks for joining us here on Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. Special guest Jeff Howe with us, of course, previewing the draft tomorrow night. All things Patriots. Jeff also just wrote a great column on Cam Ward that I want to ask him about. But first, tomorrow, busy day tomorrow. So 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be on 98.5 with Beadle and Phil Perry. So you want to check that out. And then tomorrow night, here's the plan, 6 to 6:30. We're going to live stream right here, Everything Pats, little pre-draft talk. Then 7 to 7:30, I'm going to do an NFL live stream, Crafts and Kickoffs podcast. And then after the fourth pick is made tomorrow night, back on the live stream here at Everything Pats. So hopefully you have all of that written down. All right, so Jeff, you have written a great Cam Ward story at The Athletic. If anybody wants to check it out, I suggest that you do. Let me ask you this, Jeff, and thanks for joining us as always, my man. Mm-hmm. What do you think the Pats would have been able, and I know this is going to bother some people, but I've got to ask the question. What do you think the Patriots would have been able to ask for if they actually had that number one pick in the draft tomorrow night and Cam Ward's sitting there and he's got teams wanting to move up and draft him? What kind of QB are we talking about, Cam Ward, here? How much would that return have been for the Pats?
Well, I think if you just look, you kind of go in reverse here a little bit, where the Titans they've been pretty set on Cam Ward for a while. I know Mike Borgonzi came out yesterday and said that they're keeping the pick. They started to really feel good about that based off the conversations I've had with people around the league for several weeks. And the teams that have called are the Browns and the Giants, interested in trying to move up. To my understanding, they weren't even given a price. So now, when they started to call the Browns and the Giants, that was after I really got the sense that Cam Ward had distinguished himself as the number one quarterback, I should at least say, because it was between him and Shedeur Sanders for so long. So you just look at that, you connect the dots, and whether you want to say, oh, it's lying season or what have you, I mean, this is just about connecting dots and making informed, educated opinions or reports or whatever you want to call it here. They were trying to move up for Cam Ward. So you would have had three teams in the top, let's say 4, depending on if the Patriots lost that final game and how the draft order would have slotted itself out. You know, there would have been some competition there. And I think at minimum, you're talking an extra second round pick. Now, if you had all three teams that were fully on board with trying to move up and you could start a bidding war that Tennessee wasn't interested in really having, right? Patriots put this pick up for sale. You're getting, I don't know, again, assuming bidding war, a 2 and a 3, maybe you get a 1, what have you. But yeah, they missed a big opportunity. You know, I don't want to like recycle the old debate of whether they should or shouldn't have lost it, or whether it was Mayo's fault or whatever. Like, you guys are playing their final Sunday of the season. They're going to try hard.
Right.
Blame who you want, but they won that game, and that's the cost of it.
Yeah, I know some people disagree with me on this, but I thought they did almost all they could do to try to lose that game. You're starting your third quarterback. Well, you didn't start him. You started May for one series, but you've got Milton out there playing most of the game, practice squad guys, third string guys. I don't know what else they would have been able to do. And obviously,
same with the Bills on the other side.
Yeah. And Buffalo was trying to lose that game. So it's like, it is what it is. You brought up Shedeur Sanders. Of course, Sanders is going to or could impact the Patriots at 4. And Jeff, I'm reading stuff, and man, oh man, the NFL is all over the map with Sanders. He could go 3, he could go 33. What's the latest you've heard about the QB out of Colorado?
It's to your point, it's so unpredictable. And I'd like to think that I was out in front of this for quite a while. I mean, I kept saying, like, the quarterbacks in this class were not overly exciting. And I think people are certainly. Now, I'm not saying that Cam Ward's not an exciting prospect, but I think you fall off from him, and there are just so many question marks about Shedeur Sanders. And there are some people who might not like the personality. There are some people who certainly don't like the play on the field or don't think it's necessarily warranting of a top 2, top 3 type of pick. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to see that tomorrow when the Browns pass on him, and very possibly the Giants could do the same. So he's an imperfect prospect. And then you're always like the thing that's been overlooked so much and is looking at the 26 class. That's supposed to be another really good quarterback class.
Yeah.
So if you draft Shedeur in the top 3, Now, granted, if you draft Shedeur in the top 3, it doesn't work out. You're talking about potential jobs on the line, and everybody in Cleveland and New York is really on the hot seat already. But you're going to get a new regime, whatever. They're not going to be totally married to the previous regime's prospect, but you're going to make it a whole lot harder, or at least you're going to screw up your asset management if you go quarterback in the top 5 in 2 consecutive drafts. Like that's rarely a recipe conducive to success. So you just have teams that just don't want to force it. And if you're the Giants, like you're in a really interesting spot because you're almost certainly going to have either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. I think Hunter's going too. So you still have that marquee type of pick where you could sell 3 and probably get a decent return out of it. I'm not saying it's going to be a future 1. It might not even be a 2 in this draft. But like if you really want Shedeur Sanders, you want to drop a few picks, you're going to be able to move number 3 to a team that wants Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So there's just – it does have massive ramifications. Obviously, he can go as high as 3. The Saints are a team that has been so heavily in on so many of these all of these quarterback prospects. And I was out on the pro day trail. I mean, they were big on Quinn Ewers. They were big on Jackson Dart. They've been big on those guys who were fringe, first, second, whatever, day 1, day 2 picks. And I think this is my read. I have not been told this. I think that was their strategy because they didn't think Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward was a realistic possibility. And who knows about Jackson Dart at 9. But now all of a sudden you're the Saints and you're like, oh my goodness, like Shedeur Sanders might actually be there at 9.
Right.
I still think they have too many other needs and, needs that align with the prospects who are going to also be there at 9. So if the Saints pass on him, there's been a lot of links to Shedeur and the Sanders Shedeur Sanders and the Steelers at 23. But man, I don't know. Like that's truly one prospect I can't get a read on because there's just so many differing opinions about so many different sides of this prospect.
Yeah. And look, I had been saying for a while post college football season that I thought there would be 2 quarterbacks taken in the top 3 just out of desperation. In history, when you look at teams, they need a quarterback. You've got Cleveland, you've got the Giants, both front offices and coaching staffs on the hot seat. And I figured, hey, someone's going to take a stab at Shedeur and try to make this thing work. But the closer we get to tomorrow night, it feels like that's not going to happen. Let me ask you this, and Jeff Howe with us from The Athletic on the Everything Pats podcast today, getting you ready for the NFL draft. Let me ask you this. Before we get into the details of what the Patriots might do, most likely will do in this draft, what have you heard about Mike Vrabel as far as running this program during the pre-draft process? How heavy of a hand has he had in this thing? What are you hearing about that?
I mean, he has a pretty commanding presence when he's at a pro day. He's very hands-on when he wants to be. I saw him at Texas. I know the day before that, I believe, was when he was at Boston College. I can't think of off the top of my head what other pro days he was at, but I mean, this is a guy who knows what he wants. He's an authoritative figure, no nonsense, all that stuff. I mean, it's everything that everybody really knows about him already. But I thought it was important when they had one of their news conferences this offseason. It was on the heels of a free agent signing. And they had Elliott Wolf out there front and center too. And I thought that was an important piece that the Patriots put out there. I mean, it was like, because at the time there was so much discourse of who's calling the shots, who's got the most authority, who's got final say, which is something that I truly believe is overblown. But just putting Elliott Wolf out there shows that he's still somebody who has a lot of power within this organization. I don't know what else more to add to that.
I just feel like, everybody's talked about it. I don't want to go too much into it because it is what it is. I think it's obvious that Mike Vrabel is the guy that does have final say with how this offseason's been handled. Could be wrong, but everybody freaks out about the collaboration word. Every team in the NFL collaborates. That's not new business. Everybody gets into that room and has a conversation, and you ultimately need somebody to make that decision. But collaboration is through every team's front office for the most part, and you go across sports as well if you want to go there. Collaboration is part of the deal. Let me ask you, Jeff, what's the likelihood? I've been reading a lot of this stuff over the past 2 days. A lot of smoke about Ashton Genty. And, of course, we're close to the draft, so smoke screens are all over the place. Agents are talking and teams are talking, and that picks up as we get closer. Ashton Genty, and any chance in your mind that the Patriots actually could find a trade partner with a team that wants Genty and is concerned that the Jaguars might pick him before he falls to them? Any shot of that? Is there any shot of the Patriots trading down from 4 to say the Raiders or the Bears because one of those two teams just wants Genty that badly?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Absolutely. The Genty hype from the teams I've spoken to is why. I mean, he is a very, very highly regarded prospect. And I know, I mean, at this point, everybody's read everything about every top 10 prospect there is to say. So, like, I'm probably not I'm just trying to convey that, like, you go into these and you have these conversations. Like, for instance, I had my top 10 mock draft yesterday, and it's something I do every year. It's something I really look forward to doing. I really it was cliche to mock Ashton Genty to the Raiders. I went into it thinking, how can I convince myself not to do that? Because I really don't want to fall into those traps. And it was like everything I was told by so many different people. It was like, oh no, like that's real. Like, unless it's like T-Mac, the wide receiver there from Arizona, like it's going to be Genty. And people around the league are just so convinced of that. I certainly see a possible fit there with Jacksonville, knowing how much Liam Cohen wants to run the ball. And he gets all this praise and everything for the passing game and Baker Mayfield's resurgence and all that stuff, and it's deserved. But that's still a run-based offense. So I could see the Jaguars needing him. And you mentioned the Bears. I mean, honestly, just the way that I've heard people from teams that aren't even in the mix for Genty, like somebody who's definitely not going to go into the top 10 for him, just hearing the way that they've talked about him, I could absolutely see a team calling the Patriots and saying, you know what, I don't want to miss out on this prospect. Now, playing devil's advocate, I think the biggest thing, and I don't know how much attention this has got because I don't really pay attention to this stuff, but I just know from my own research, this is a really good, really deep running back draft.
Yeah.
And you can get running backs in any round, any given year. But this year, I think the percentages or the chances of doing that are a lot higher.
Right.
So you don't necessarily have to force yourself upon Genty if you like some of those guys who are going to go later. I think like a Travion Henderson, I think is going to be a real impact player for a team that has, a team that has a chance to win a lot of playoff games in January throughout his career. Skatibo, I think, is a really intriguing prospect. Whatever, we can go all on down the line. But I think that's the only thing that could give teams pause. It's like, all right, how much do I want to sell to get a guy like Genty when I could just be patient, hold true to my board, get another quality player in the first round, and then get one of these really good players later?
Yeah, and that's been actually part of my argument against drafting Genty at 4 is because it is so deep at that position. And, I love Genty, but running back to me is a little bit more final piece of the puzzle than it is build the team around that guy. Even Saquon Barkley had a tremendous offensive line in Philly last year, and I don't know if he has that kind of season without that kind of offensive line. Let's talk about somebody else we haven't really brought up here. Are you buying into this idea that Abdul Carter could fall past 3?
No. I mean, the only way is if the Giants take a quarterback, but I don't see it. I mean, for what it's worth, probably not much. If I were running the Titans draft, I'd take Abdul Carter at 1.
Really?
I like him that much. And this is totally separate from Cam Ward in that decision. I really like Abdul Carter. And in my top 10 mock, I put Carter to the Giants, and I want to say it was like 3 executives who were like, yeah, I mean, if he's there, that is a huge win for the Giants. And it's easy to sit there and say, well, they already invested in the Brian Burns trade and the Kayvon Thibodeau pick. Look, you can bring in Carter, and you could probably move Thibodeau if it really came to it. Like, if you weren't sold on keeping him beyond this season, you could move Thibodeau for probably a Friday pick. So I don't see why the Giants, like, again, unless they really like Shedeur Sanders a lot more than whatever. If they like Shedeur Sanders enough to take him at 3, they're going to take him. Other than that, it's got to be Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. And again, just everything I've heard for so long, I've really believed Travis Hunter was going 2 to the Browns. And I thought when Joe Shane said they are not going to force the quarterback decision at 3, that screams to me they were prepared to take the next guy, whether it was Carter or Hunter.
All right, Jeff Howe with us from The Athletic. Don't forget to do a couple things here as we continue with Jeff. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button. More likes means more eyeballs. Let's take advantage of that algorithm. I talk about it all the time. So help us by liking this live stream, liking this channel if you're catching it on demand. Don't forget to throw a comment in as well. What do you want the Patriots to do tomorrow night? How you feeling about this draft? Whatever you want to talk about, throw a comment in. Likes and comments help us with that algorithm. And let's subscribe, folks. We're trying to hit 6,600 subscribers by tomorrow night. That's the goal. The initial goal was 6,500. We have surpassed that. Let's try to get to 6,600 by tomorrow night, by the first pick of the draft. So like, comment, subscribe, and of course, Spotify, Apple Pods, friends, rate, review, leave a comment there as well. All right, Jeff. Aside from Carter Hunter falling, which you just said is very unlikely, don't think it's going to happen. Are we at the point that it's Will Campbell or bust for the Patriots at 4 if they can't trade down?
I've believed that for about 2 or 3 weeks at this point. I know they really like him. I know they would be head over heels ecstatic if Hunter or Carter fell to them at 4. I just don't see it being a realistic scenario. I mean, low chance. Again, Shedeur Sanders, probably the only person who can disrupt that. So it was, Will Campbell, and they're comfortable with the arm size or arm length debate. They really love the attitude. He's a Mike Vrabel type of prospect, a personality, no nonsense. He should give you instant credibility in the locker room. He's going to be a leader. Is there a concern that he's not going to pan out as a long-term left tackle? Sure. In my opinion, I don't think it's any more concern that, any other pick in the top 10 doesn't pan out. I think if you develop him the right way, if he's well coached, if you put him in good situations, you're going to get a good football player. Now, again, worst case scenario, if he's a left guard for 10 years, did you maximize value on the pick? Maybe not. But it's the first pick of Mike Vrabel's tenure. You want to take a safe player, a guy that is a kindred soul to Vrabel.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't screw around with it all that much. You just try to make him your left tackle of the future.
The people that you've spoken with, Jeff, because you just mentioned the Patriots aren't necessarily bothered by the arm length, and we've read that for the last few weeks. But the people you've spoken with around the game, are they concerned by the arm length? Are more people or less people saying that they believe Campbell is an NFL left tackle?
More people believe that he is than isn't.
Okay.
The arm length debate, there's a split there. I don't know. I mean, some people say it does show up on film against those elite edge rushers. Some people have said, you know what, he's held his own just fine. Don't worry about it too much. And he's going to continue to get better and all that other stuff. So, it's real. Some people who won't take a left tackle in particular, but a tackle with shorter arms than they'd like, they're going to stay away. Dante Scarnecchia doesn't have a problem with arm length. Dante Scarnecchia is the greatest offensive line coach in NFL history. So I think that should be good enough for a lot of people.
How much concern should people have if you look at Mike Vrabel's history here, right? Obviously, he wasn't the guy making the call down in Tennessee, but Peter Skoronski was somebody they drafted early, ended up at guard. Mike went on record saying, he thought he was a tackle, ended up playing guard pretty much right off the gate. Then you had Isaiah Wilson, I believe, another first-round pick that was a complete flop at tackle. Any concern that Vrabel is going to suffer again from drafting a guy maybe higher than he should have at that position and just falling in love with the dude?
Yeah, I mean, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't take that off the board. And you know what? You could look at the draft mistakes that Elliott Wolf made last year too, and have the same concern. You could apply it to Wolf, you could apply it to Vrabel, you could apply it to whoever you want, the system, whatever you want to say. There's no guarantee, and I don't want to speak in cliches here, but I think the general confidence around the league that Will Campbell is going to be a good football player should probably override most of that concern. It doesn't mean that I'm 100% certain he's going to be a solid player, but I feel pretty good about it, considering the amount of feedback I've gotten on Campbell.
Jeff Howe with us from The Athletic. Jeff,
And
how
actually,
much?
you know what? I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
I
go ahead.
kind of wanted to, because I've been in on the tackles for a while, because, I always start out in the middle of the college football season with the quarterbacks. And then I try to figure out, all right, who are the big names from there? Last year it was the wide receivers,
Yeah.
Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze. This year, it really seemed like the tackles were going to be a prominent storyline. So this isn't like intel that I've just tried to, um, find out or research over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This is stuff that I've been asking people, at the executive level in the NFL since like October, November. So this is intel that I do feel pretty confident about.
How much is it, Jeff, this idea of the Patriots drafting Campbell? How much is it that they just love Campbell and that's the guy they want to pick? And how much is it that if they don't draft a tackle at 4, there's some concern that they might not be able to find that left tackle later in the draft?
Well, no, that's a really good question. And philosophically, I think the league, I remember I wrote something about this a few years ago, and I haven't updated it, so some of the data could be somewhat outdated. But when it comes to drafting offensive linemen early, the top 40 picks in the draft, the league is pretty good at that. I think the hit rate on tackles in particular is pretty good in the top 40. Whereas, like, if your chances of drafting a Pro Bowl tackle or offensive lineman really drop off, we're talking about running backs. Like, you can find running backs in any rounds. Wide receivers are certainly becoming somewhat of that. It's a position sort of like that over the last half decade. Tackles, it's like, if you don't get a tackle in the first round or the first 40 picks, you're probably not finding a diamond in the rough in the 5th or 6th round. Like, yes, it happens. There are certainly examples, but you're usually going to find a good player there. So if you desperately need a left tackle like the Patriots do, and you're confident in that player at number 4, you take him, because there is absolutely no guarantee you're going to get another kick at the can in the 30s.
The thing I've been thinking about, I want your thoughts on this as an insider, as somebody who talks to all of these sources. It feels almost like there's too much smoke about Will Campbell going to the Patriots. It feels a little weird to me that, you could even talk about, we don't really know what the Giants are going to do at 3, but this Will Campbell to New England thing has been hot really for the past couple of months. And I just keep asking myself, like, why would this information come out? Who's leaking this information? Is there almost too much smoke, Jeff, about Campbell that might make us think maybe something else is up, or that's just kind of the nature of the conversation around the league?
Yeah, I mean, like, when they take Jalon Walker tomorrow night, I'm going to sit there and wonder how many times I screwed up over the last couple of months. Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. Like, you can never discount anything. All we can do, somebody in my position, all I can do is just keep asking a lot of the same questions for several months, try to get feedback from people I've trusted and have given me good information in the past, or good evaluations in the past, and just try to marry it up and do the best that we can with it. So, could it be Membu? Could they like Josh Simmons more? Like, sure. Could they sit there and say, hey, you know what? The Raiders or whoever, the Saints are willing to offer a 3 and 9, the number 9 pick and a 3rd rounder, and you're comfortable moving down because you're going to get any one of those 3 Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Right.
Those scenarios absolutely could exist. I know they're comfortable with them, or I shouldn't say I know, because I'm not in the room. I've heard enough that they're comfortable with them that I believe that they're comfortable with them. But yeah, I mean, shoot, you never know until they're on the clock and they have to make that pick.
You just brought up his name. What's up with the Jalon Walker smoke the last couple of weeks about the Patriots and Jalon?
I think it's easy to draw the versatile linebacker, edge, space linebacker comparison to a guy like Vrabel, and you look at his career and you say, all right, he can probably get the best out of Walker. I don't think it's going to happen. If they had a good left tackle, I would say, or even like a serviceable left tackle, I would say, okay, you know what? Maybe that is a possibility. Maybe somebody else is a possibility. I just think, like, the need is just so great at left tackle. And he just does feel like a safe prospect, Campbell, that I'm trying not to overthink it. But in terms of like the smoke with, it hasn't really come up too much in my conversations. I don't, so I don't, I never, ever want to speak for another reporter and where they're getting their information. So I don't know where it's coming from in that regard. All I can do is give you the best from what I'm hearing.
It's just interesting because Bert and Reese and a number of other people have kind of thrown Walker out there over the last few days. And it's usually when that happens, it means there's some kind of steam. All right, outside of the fourth pick, Jeff, what are we talking about as far as what the Patriots want to do here in this draft? What are you hearing? Obviously, they have 4 picks in the top, what is it, 77? They have 5 picks in the top 105, 106. What are they going to try to accomplish here over the weekend? What are you hearing about Vrabel and the statement that he wants to make, or just the general vibe of this team going into this weekend?
You want to add good culture fits because it's a new regime for the second time in a row. So you don't want to mess around with that. Not necessarily like man, just guys who are going to be leaders, who are going to be no nonsense, hard workers, are going to set the tone on the field, off the field. Again, Campbell is perfect for that. I wouldn't be, I think a guy like Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, would be fantastic. I mean, the stories I've heard of his leadership at Alabama, I don't know if he's going to be there at 35, wherever they pick next. He could go anywhere between 20 and 40, in my opinion. But that would be another home run pick. Even if you go Campbell, Booker, 1-2, I think that would be an outstanding start for the Patriots. But yeah, you want game-breaking talent at receiver. You certainly want to tap into this running back pool because there's so many good ones. But I think it really just starts with setting the foundation and bringing in guys who you believe are going to be in the program for a long time. And, I think that's everybody's goal in every draft, but it's so important when you are changing regimes for the second time in as many drafts.
It feels like, from what I've read and what I've heard and watched, that this first round could be pretty unpredictable. Now, I know a lot of people usually say that year in and year out, but it does feel like this draft could be unpredictable. Could you see the Patriots? Do you think that part of the conversation for them inside that building is, let's try to move back into the first round and grab somebody that we value instead of waiting at 38? How much of a likelihood is it that they could do something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, especially when you get into that 20 to 40 range, you're going to get a lot of similarly graded players. So that usually invites teams, especially in the 20s, who are coming off a playoff appearance, feel like they can slide back, maybe pick up an extra pick down the road. If the Patriots feel convicted about a guy to move up and get him, yeah, I mean, absolutely go for it. It's just, in terms of the unpredictability of the draft, I think, that usually comes when there are enough players in the top 10 to 15 picks that you're like really dying to trade up for. And that group doesn't really seem to exist right now. Now, maybe there's an earlier run on quarterbacks than expected. If Jackson Dart goes early, I remember, 6 weeks ago or something like that, I had a team, or 2 teams, I believe it was, that said they didn't think Jackson Dart was getting out of the first half of the first round. I'm not as convinced about that right now as I was a month and a half ago. But if he does, and then you start to look at, Shuck and Milrow and, Ewers and guys like that, maybe there is an earlier run on quarterbacks. That would be great for the Patriots sitting there early in the second round.
Wide receiver, what are you hearing about that position? Obviously, you got Tet McMillan, you got Matthew Golden, you got some other guys there. Any shot that the Patriots can find a legitimate wide receiver in this draft, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not. I never like to blow smoke and sit here and like, oh, you know what? So-and-so in the 5th round is going to be a home run. Like, I don't have the bandwidth to tackle every position that diligently. Look, like, again, if you – the problem here is I can sit here until I'm blue in the face and say that, you're guaranteed to find a quality wide receiver in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Like, that stuff is going to happen from here until the end of time. The Patriots' track record suggests that's not exactly a sure thing. So you got to start doing a better job. I don't care who's running the show. you got to start drafting wide receivers who are going to be impact play. I mean, you got to start drafting wide receivers who are going to make it to the end of their damn rookie contracts. So let's start easy.
Yeah, let's start there. Just a couple more for you, Jeff. And again, Jeff Howe from The Athletic with us. Everything Pats, New England Patriots podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the channel. Do you see a lot of veteran movement this weekend? Do you think we could have a few guys that are shipped off during draft weekend, including the Patriots? I know Kayshon Boutte's name has been out there over the last week or two, but do you think we'll see some movement this weekend across the league?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens with Colton Miller and if the Giants get Abdul Carter. Would they be interested in moving Thibodeau? I think those are the first two names that come to mind. I'm sure there are others that I'm overlooking here, but those are the two bigger ones just off the top of my head. I mean, Kirk Cousins, of course, everybody's looking at. I think at this point, it seems pretty likely that the Falcons are happy to keep him as their backup. So, yeah, but who knows? I think, if you look at the Cousins situation, you probably have to wait for Friday night to play out just to see like which of these teams that needs a quarterback is going to get the guy that they're most comfortable with. If they can't, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's say the Browns really want, any one of these three quarterbacks, they all get taken earlier than they have a chance to take them. Then maybe they circle back with the Falcons and say, hey, all right, let's see if we can make something work. Maybe we can eat more of the contract than we previously considered or something along those lines.
One last one before I get to a super chat. The coaching staff. I don't know how much you heard. I don't want to throw dirt on Gerard Mayo, but as we get ready for this draft and we look back at last year's draft class, there has been some talk, Jeff, that the coaching staff last year didn't do that class any favors. Is it reasonable to expect that last year's draft class might get a little bit of a bump this year, given the new staff and the more experienced staff, or that might be going a little too far?
Well, I mean, let's look at the receivers. Jalen Polk, I remember hearing really good things about Jalen. I think I tweeted stuff on Friday night being like, hey, this is what I heard about Polk. Like there were certainly teams that liked him more than what their draft prognostications were.
Right.
And that was real. So it's not like they drafted Jalen Polk and just totally whiffed on the prospect. Now, I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe that will be the outcome. And we'll realize that a couple of years from now. I don't know. But like Jalen Polk was a good player. Javon Baker had things going for him. Now, he talked a lot and he didn't back it up. So you wonder maybe that was a misread. But Josh McDaniels knows how to put players in positions to succeed. He's one of the most highly respected offensive coordinators in the league. And I think they're going to have, or I feel confident they're going to have more of an identity on offense. Defensively, a little bit of a different staff. I think that's more of a question mark. But you want to look at the two biggest whiffs just in terms of their rookie seasons and Polk and Baker and put them with a more experienced offensive coordinator who is more comfortable in his own skin. I don't want to compare him, who is comfortable in his own skin. There's reason to believe that you could see a bump out of those guys. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say you got to bank on it, but I have a lot of trust in what Josh McDaniels can do.
All right, let's pull up this super chat, $5 super chat from Derek. Thanks, Derek, for the 5. I just hope that the Pats don't try to get cute with trading down, trying to get someone and end up missing on who they want. How much of that argument is there, Jeff? Like, hey, look, they love Campbell. Vrabel loves Campbell. Don't get cute. Don't overthink it. Just pick the guy at 4 and move the hell on.
So I would just kick that take that one step further. And if they are, let's say they like Campbell so much more than Membu and Simmons or Banks. But I really think Membu and Simmons are probably the next two tackles. But if they think Campbell is that much better, don't screw it. Don't screw around with it. Just take the player. Take a good player. Now, if they are sitting there and saying, all right, yeah, we know Membu and Simmons have higher ceilings and we feel comfortable that we can coach them up and so on and so forth, then yeah, you know what? Move down. Pick up some extra picks. this team needs a lot more than just the left tackle. So I think it's not necessarily as much about Campbell as it is, because when you're trading down, it's not like the Patriots are going to go from 4 to 13. I don't think, if they trade down, it's probably like 4-5 spots max, or 6, I guess, if you want to include the Bears, if the Genty hype is realistic. You're going to get one of those tackles, and there is a lot to like about Membu and Simmons. Now, they're not Campbell is a safer pick because teams are generally very confident he's going to be a solid football player. But again, you talk about the high-end talent that Membu and Simmons have, and if they're able to put it together just in terms of growing up as human beings and maturing, in terms of age with Membu, or just maturing in the locker room with Simmons, it's not bad stuff. It's just like, hey, you just got to grow up a little bit. You got to learn to be a pro. It's up to the coaching staff to also bring them along to help them grow up and become good pros. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with the tackle debate.
We'll get you out on this one. Floor is yours. Give me a bold prediction. Patriots or NFL? Just bold NFL draft prediction from Jeff Howe.
Let's see. I'll say Sanders falls into the 20s. You know what? No, I don't want to. I was going to go with Dart. This would be more of a reckless prediction, but I wouldn't be shocked if Jackson Dart's the second quarterback off the board. But that's a hot take. That's not like a prediction. I'm trying to go bold. I'm trying to go hot here for you. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. That's what I'll give you, because so much in the top 10 is looking pretty chalky. So I'm just trying to go, step out of my comfort zone there for you.
You heard it here first. Jackson Dart, third to the Giants, according to Jeff Howe of The Athletic. Jeff, it's always great catching up with you, man. I appreciate the time. I know you're busy this time of year. You get stuff to do, so I appreciate you. And as far as everybody else watching, listening, I'm back tomorrow night again. We'll go 6 to 6:30. Everything Pat's live stream before the draft. Get you ready with all the latest. And then we will be reacting to said pick at number 4 right after the pick is made, again with another live stream. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.